All right, let's get ready for these pre-cals. Before we start the pre-cals, want to give you a message from our sponsor on this SleepTech Appreciation Week, React Health, formerly 3B, leading provider of sleep diagnostic, and respiratory products. We thank them so much for their sponsorship. And Emerson, tell us what's going on. Emma, you're on mute.
You know, I sound good on mute, actually.
I was about to say that's the first
video
time
is even better when I'm not.
I enjoyed listening to you.
I do. It's so much better. No, you know, we have Jon Atkinson on today, and Jon, wow, there's so much he's been involved in over his career with sleep technology. It's going to be great to hear some of that history. It's going to be really fascinating to just hear his passion come through. If you spend any time with him, he's a passion for the details and for the small things that just really add up when it comes to doing sleep technology with excellence. So we have a lot to look forward to today.
Yeah. Robert, any thoughts?
Yeah, of course I'm excited. This guy signed my first registry certificate. And you know, I took the real test back. My co-host of the show, who got to take one test and wait for the results on a computer. I actually had Jon standing over my shoulder, watching me hook up a patient and running a polygraph for a few minutes, and then doing my post-test cals, and somehow I passed. So I'm excited to. I don't think I've actually spoken to him since that day. So it's been a long time.
So
Wow.
I've worked with Jon with the AAST on the education committee. So that's been fun. And I'm glad I did not have to have a test with him behind my back.
I would still be a respiratory therapist if that was the case.
Well, yeah. And I'm glad all I needed to do was share a couple of bourbons with him. That was my interaction. So that's.
Oh, I should have done that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the show. Stay tuned, folks.
Lights out.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Sleep Tech Talk, the sleep podcast, with your hosts and friends, Robert Miller, Emerson Kerr, and me, Dr. Gerald George Moneycarot. This episode during this very special Sleep Tech Week is brought to you by React Health, formerly 3B Medical. It's a leading provider of sleep diagnostic, and respiratory products. The Luna 3G family of PAP devices are FDA approved and offer a cellular modem standard in CPAP, AutoPAP, and bilevel, as well as advanced bilevel modes to treat a full range of sleep disorder breathing. The magnet-free line of PAP masks include the Siesta Full Face, Siesta Nasal, and the Rio 2 nasal pillow mask, all of which have less than 1% of refit rate. Visit them at reacthealth.com or contact your local sales executive to learn more. So folks, be sure to check out React Health, and be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and do not forget to share with other sleep techs out there. To tell us what's going on today, Emerson, let us know.
Hey, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate that, and thank you, React, for your support. So today we have another special guest. Quite a few people can trace their RPSGT registry signatures, to Jon Atkinson. Jon has been a part of sleep for a very long time. We have a lot we can be thankful for that Jon has brought to us, but thankfully he was able to condense his bio down to just a minute rather than the usual 20 minutes with all of his accomplishments. They're incredible. But Jon actually started as a sleep technologist in 1981 and became board certified in 1983. He has served on the board of directors as an at-large director from 94 to 96 and 2000 to 2006. He was president-elect from 2006 to 2007, and he was the AAST president from 2007 through the rest of that year, and immediate past president 2009 to 2010. He also served as a membership chair from 97 to 2000, as an A to Z editor in 2000 and 2009 to 2010. Jon has authored chapters in several sleep and sleep technology texts and written numerous articles in A to Z on cardiac arrhythmias. He has spoken at numerous local, regional, and national and international meetings, and has taught AAST programs as well as technologist and physician review courses. He was a recipient of the Weizmann Award in 2003 and the McGregor Award in 2010. He was inaugural class of the Fellow of American Association of Sleep Technologists. Jon continues to serve the profession as a member of the Continuous Education Committee and the Exam Development Committee. He has been involved in consulting in sleep technologist education and mentoring and sleep center management and accreditation processes since 1998. Jon, thank you for abbreviating that for me. What an amazing contribution you've had to sleep technology. But we love to ask everyone a very simple question to kind of kick things off. For the three of us, we didn't plan on being sleep technologists. We sort of fell backwards into it and fell in love with it. Tell us about how you got into sleep technology to kick us off.
Well, like everyone else there, I fell into it also. I was teaching anatomy and physiology at Otterbein College in Westerville, Ohio, and just doing this part-time. And I became a 29-year-old father of one to becoming a 29-year-old father of three. And so I had to find full-time work. And Sandy Clenny, who was the director of EEG at Ohio State, we had known each other for years and said that there was a physician who was interested in setting up a sleep lab and asked if I'd be interested. Well, I went and interviewed, and the rest is history. That was in early 1981. And I found out that sleep technology was like an applied physiology laboratory. And with my background in anatomy and physiology, I was hooked, just literally hooked. And progressed through the night stuff to days to management and so forth. And in 98, started to do my consulting business and did some agency work in the interim when I didn't have the private consulting jobs. It was fascinating. And one of the interesting things is, when I was president of the organization, I made a statement. I said, someday I would love to meet somebody who actually grew up saying, I've always wanted to be a sleep technologist. I have yet to meet that person. Everybody falls into it via some circuitous route. It may happen before long. Who knows?
That's you're right. It may happen because we actually see people now taking that course for sleep technology and actually opting for it. So it just might happen pretty sooner than later. So let's all keep our fingers crossed if people say, hey, I want to be a sleep tech.
Well, we are now having education requirements for the registry exam. And I think that will move us in the right direction. When I first started a few years ago, we were a bunch of fairly educated young snots looking for a place to land. Some of us found it and had developed a passion for what we found. And that's the only way that you survive the rigors of sleep medicine technology. You've got to have passion for sleep. You've got to keep yourself educated. If you don't do that, you'll never get it here. You've got to have it in your heart if you're going to survive. We went from a group of bright, educated people to less than that as the business expanded rapidly following the advent of CPAP. And we started to treat things that heretofore had been treatable only by surgery, tracheotomy, UPPP, and now came the wonders of CPAP. And the volumes just blew up. And with the volumes of patients blowing up, you had to have volumes of technicians to handle that huge volume of patients. And that's where the education started to dwindle.
John, with that in mind, you know, when you and the others that were leading in sleep during those times were recognizing that there was this influx of technologists and things were changing, what did you grapple with? Because you were in some of those early discussions. How did you begin to really form the education process and set the standards that we stand by today?
Well, originally the BRPT was a committee under the APT, the old Association of Polysomnographic Technologists. And it became apparent that there had to be a break between the two organizations for the purposes of getting, I guess, verification of the credential and the credentialing process. And so the BRPT broke from the AAST. And at that point in time, the BRPT became the testing entity and the AAST became the educational entity. And, you know, we always had educational programs at the national meetings, but that never seemed to be enough because people weren't funding technologists to go to these educational programs. So we had to go to locals and we had to go to doing things online. And that's where it's progressed. There are so many state and regional meetings and many online educational opportunities that weren't available back in the late 70s and early to mid 80s.
John, when you look back over your time with the AAST and the APT, what would you say are some of the most significant things you were able to be involved in? I mean, we want to get to what you did with the EKG module that the AST has now, but before we get to that, there's been plenty of other things that you've done. If you could highlight, what were some of those significant moments, you know, with the organizations over the last 2 or 3 decades that you've been a part of this?
Well, one was the development of the AAST Fundamentals of Sleep Technology, the textbook. And I was blessed to write 3 chapters in that textbook. One was the history of the APT. People kind of gloss over that and they don't even look at it. But it's the history of any organization is so very important because it opens a window into the present and allows us to look a little bit at the future. The history is very important. Then I did the cardiology stuff, and then the chapter on generating the report. It's something that we had to do back in the days of analog polysomnography. You had to score all those reports and tabulate the data and so forth. People don't know how to do that anymore. It's still part of the exam process because in developing those reports that get spit out automatically by the computer, they have to be checked. And if you don't know what comprises the percentage of total sleep time in stage N1, and you can't calculate it, how are you going to check the validity of the data? So those things are very important. So that was one. Other things that were huge in my mind was Nick Butkov's, I guess they were atlases. Fabulous information. There was just so much.
But with that in
John,
mind,
I
John,
think we also used Dale Dubin's rapid interpretation of EKGs. That was a
Yep.
pretty popular teaching tool, I think, for sleep techs, right?
Well, before I became a full-fledged sleep tech, I was an EEG person. I taught anatomy and physiology at a small college. And as we were beginning to open up the sleep center at my new employment, I spent 3 or 4 months as an EKG technologist. And my supervisor at the time gave me Dubin's rapid interpretation of EKG. Loved it, loved it. So much of that is still applicable to what we are doing now. Some of it you can discard because we as sleep technologists aren't interested so much in axis and infarct and those types of things that Dubin goes through, but you certainly are interested in rate and rhythm, and it's fabulous from that standpoint. And what I've done in my EKG articles and so forth is taken some of those arrhythmias and shown the distinguishing points between two otherwise similar arrhythmias. What is the difference between an accelerated ventricular rhythm and an accelerated junctional rhythm? What's the difference between a paroxysmal atrial tachycardia and just sinus tachycardia? Those kinds of things make good fodder for discussion.
John, with that in mind, you recently, I say recently, in the last year, the AAST was able to publish your EKG module series. Quite a piece of work. As we begin to wrap up our conversation today, what do you, when you wrote that and published that, what were the key things that you want sleep technologists who sit through the series, what are the most important takeaways you want them to have when you were thinking about that series?
Well, first of all, I was not the Lone Ranger. Lisa MD wrote the first chapter on cardiac A&P. And then I wrote the section on arrhythmias, and then a third section was on identifying those arrhythmias. The whole idea was, as in most of my lectures on the subject, was to develop a pattern for recognition. It's very systematic. And you look at the P wave, you look at the QRS complex. Is there one of each? Are you have more P waves or more QRS complexes? It becomes a very systematic, rudimentary exercise, but it's absolutely critical. People in sleep laboratories don't die because they quit breathing. They die because they have an arrhythmia that they can't recover from. Now, it may be as a result of an apnea episode or desaturation severe, but bottom line is they all die from cardiac arrhythmias. And we as sleep technologists need to be hyper aware, not just aware, hyper aware of cardiac arrhythmias.
John, it's been fantastic just hearing this, and actually wanted to dive a little bit more, being a physician, into the arrhythmias, but we are out of time. And
oh no,
yeah, I know. Can you believe it? And we've not even scratched the surface of what you bring to the table. But we thank you so much for joining us. We sincerely appreciate it. It's been so much fun, and we thank our audience for listening to us. We can't thank you enough for being there. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel on your podcast platform. Don't forget to hit the stars. And everybody, please be sure to share this with your friends everywhere, to sleep techs all over the place. Once again, happy Sleep Tech Appreciation Week. And until next time, cheers and lights on. All right, ready for post-cals. And Once again, folks, this episode is brought to you by React Health, formerly 3B Medical, leading provider of sleep diagnostic and respiratory products. Their Luna 3G or G3 family of PAP devices are FDA approved and offer cellular modem standard in the CPAP, APAP, bilevel and bilevel ST modes to treat a full range of sleep disorder breathing. They also have a magnet-free line of PAP masks, which include the Siesta Full Face, the Siesta Nasal, and the Rio 2 nasal pillow mask, all of which have less than 1% of refit rate. Be sure to go check out our sponsors at reacthealth.com or contact your local React sales exec. All right, guys, what'd you think about today's show?
Well, Jon did disappoint. He is like an encyclopedia when it comes to sleep. There's so much that we could have gotten out of today, but just hearing his journey, the things he was involved in the beginning that really set the standard for what we do in sleep technology today. It's such a real treat to have him on and hear him talk about the things he's passionate about.
All right, I like to pick one word and just use one word. I'm going with legend today. I think legend is the right word. He's the lowest registry number I think that we've had on the show so far. I think he told us 76. Is that right?
Yes.
I believe so. Yeah.
I'm 14, 15, and I've been doing this 25 or more years. So he's been doing it a long time.
I agree. It was fun. I was a little disappointed that we only had time to scratch the surface, and I really wanted to hear more of his stories. I really am intrigued by his cardiac knowledge, so it'll be really cool to hear more about that. Hopefully,
well, I hope that people will go to the AAST website too, because the work he put together on that module series is just really a gift to sleep technology. The amount of work he did, and then just pulling from so much information. I mean, so often when you hear people talk about the training they get, it's basic waveform, but just to hear him talk about comparing rhythm types together, that's extraordinary. You don't get that kind of training in a basic ACLS or a basic, BCLS type course. This is next level type EKG training.
Talking about that, isn't there a special discount for listeners on that website?
Right.
For the
That's
education?
right. 22%, from back when we had Larry on this week. So it's definitely happy Sleep Tech Appreciation Week. 22% off on that education material. That's a nice savings.
All right. Well, thank you guys. And to all our listeners out there, thank you very much. And until next time, cheers.